All right, so I'm going to be talking about the silver maple, which is this bad guy right here. And you will see a lot of these all over Toronto. They're very prevalent and they're usually very, very big. This is another one that's not really planted, or sorry, you don't really find it in naturalized areas. I'm actually not sure if it's invasive or introduced or not, but it's just generally outcompeted. One cool thing you'll see that isn't necessarily tree ID related, but you'll see there's this huge cavern where a branch used to be. So that's a really important thing when you're looking for wildlife habitat. You might get into that a little bit more with silviculture with Ben, because as a tree marker, that's something you have to look for, and it'll be like you need to retain so many cavity trees, is what they're called, per hectare. But anyway, that is a really good cavity tree for, that's a really good cavity for a cavity tree. Moving on to the actual ID part. So, silver maple leaf is a lot like a maple leaf. So you can, that's a bad leaf. This one, perfect. Is a lot like a maple leaf, but you can see it's really skinny. And if you remember when I was talking in the like kind of leaf components, leaf ID module, this one has really, really deep sinuses. And a lot of other maple trees won't have that. Actually, I've laid out some other really common maple trees that we see in and across Toronto. So again, silver maple leaf, really deep sinuses. It's very unique looking. Red maple leaf. This looks a lot like the conventional maple leaf that we all see on the Canadian flag, but it also looks very similar to the actual like sugar maple leaf, right? Which is the actual leaf on the Canadian flag. The way you differentiate between these two guys is that, remember I was talking about the sinuses would be really important? Red maple sinuses form a V. So if you can zoom in, that is a very sharp change of direction, and red maple forms this V sinus, and it's a very sharp change there. Sugar maple, as you can see, the sinus is a U shape, so it's very gradual, no sharp points, and that is a sugar maple leaf because it has a U sinus. Now, one thing that you may have heard about talking, or may have heard about just with trees in Ontario or Toronto specifically, is Norway maple and how it sucks. Never plant Norway maple. But Norway maple and sugar maple are really, really hard to tell apart. And case in point, this is a Norway maple leaf, and this is a sugar maple leaf. So you can see Norway maple has those U sinuses again, so it can be very easily confused. And it kind of looks like it has the same number of lobes. That's actually not correct. So a sugar maple leaf has, well, I can hold it up to my chest, that might be a little bit easier. So a sugar maple leaf has 5 lobes, so you can count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These little guys down here, they most certainly count as lobes. Norway maple leaf has 7. So again, these little guys count as lobes, so you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I won't cover my finger, 7. So watch out for these little guys when you're trying to differentiate Norway and sugar. Another thing too is that Norway maple has these spines on the edge of the lobes. So again, in contrast to sugar maple, you can see these ends are quite pointy. These ends not so pointy. They don't come into hairs. So not pointy sugar maple, pointy Norway maple. The very last thing, and let's see if I can do it, when you pick a leaf, so this is a Norway maple, when you pick the leaf off of the tree, there will be this white stuff that oozes out. Ah, crap. This wasn't a freshly picked leaf, so you won't be able to see it. But there's this white kind of sap that oozes out of the base of the petiole on a Norway maple leaf. So if all else fails, if the leaf part looks exactly the same, pick a leaf off, which I don't encourage, but pick a leaf off and squeeze it a little bit, and you should see this white syrupy sap pop out. Last thing I want to talk about with the silver maple is the form of the bark. And in contrast to other maples, this bark is extremely peely and extremely thin. So these ridges are very thin compared to, say, sugar maple ridges, which hopefully we'll find at some point during this course. Like I'll find a really good example of that. But these are really long and stringy and peely versus a sugar maple which has kind of like one plate that's peely, and then there's a little bit other, and then there's another plate that's peely. Please do not confuse this for honey locust. They are certainly not the same. Don't ever use just one thing. So like this bark might be confused by honey locust, but if you look at the leaf, maple has a simple leaf, honey locust has a compound leaf. So just remember to look at a bunch of different things when you're trying to ID a tree. Very rarely will one thing ever be the key ID. There's only, very rarely will you only have to look at one thing to ID a tree.